2012. Call the roll.
Newcomb Clark. Here. Russ Collins.
Here.
Bob Gunsel.
Here.
Lee Gunn. Here. Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heathcliff.
Here.
Bill Moonstein. John Moa.
Here.
Nader Nassif.
Here.
Keith Orr. Sandy Smith. Here. John Split.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item is audience participation. Under our rules, we have this part of the agenda limited to 4 speakers, and 4 have signed up. So if you're interested in speaking to the board, you have to wait till the end of the meeting when we'll have another audience participation. So Eric Lipson has signed up. Eric?
Hi, I'm splitting my time, actually I'm adding my time with my associate here who's going to be showing the little slideshow, so I'll just leave it to...
All right, Will Hathaway.
It's like the Senate, I yield my time. All right, well, thank you. We're glad to be back to talk a bit more about the Library Green project. Eric and I are part of a group of Ann Arborites who are working to promote the idea of a park of some kind on the library lot. So this is our slideshow we put together to promote that idea. So there we go. There we go. Uh-oh.
Technology.
There you go. Oops, too fast. All right. Ah! Now it's going backwards. Here, let me
Point it right at it.
All right, there we go. So Ann Arbor lacks public space downtown for the people who work and live in that part of the city. We used to have a town square, which was the lawn of the courthouse. That's the old courthouse, for those of you who may remember that. It's long gone. In the middle of Ann Arbor is a place, whoops, that could be, get it to work. All right. In the middle of Ann Arbor is a space that could be the missing Central Park for the city. The library block is bounded by 5th Avenue, William Division, and Liberty Streets. Library block is anchored by the library, but is also home to organizations such as the Center for Education of Women, the Christian Science Reading Room, the U of M Credit Union, and the Intercooperative Council. The library block is home to small businesses such as Jerusalem Garden, Earth and Jar, Seva, the Comedy Showcase, and Herb David's Guitar Studio. In the northeast corner is Liberty Plaza. It's the only park in downtown Ann Arbor. It was called the Best Pocket Park by one of its designers. Liberty Plaza is a modest open space connected by a ramp and a footpath to the library lot. The center of the block is a publicly owned space known as the library lot. This was a surface parking lot, but now it's transformed by construction of a new underground parking structure and street. How should the city use the top of this new 677 space library lot parking structure? The Calthorpe process recommended a town square on that site. A hotel conference center was proposed, but this idea was rejected as unfeasible in spring of 2011. There were proposals for park on the library lot, but these were dismissed because it was claimed that they wouldn't create economic benefits for the city. But other cities have created spaces that have generated economic development. Campus Martius, Riverwalk in Detroit, Post Office Square in Boston, Highline Park in New York City, Millennium Park in Chicago, Discovery Green in Houston. Campus Martius is a thriving park in the center of Detroit with many outdoor performances. In the winter, there's skating, which is very popular. Riverwalk connects public spaces along the river. Post Office Square was built on top of underground parking in the center of Boston. The High Line is built on top of abandoned rail line in New York City. Post Office Square, oh, sorry, I already did that. Right, I'm getting tripped up by my own slideshow here. Well, in any case, that was Millennium Park, the slide just before this. Discovery Green is in Houston and has year-round activities, including ice skating. All these parks generate economic benefits through placemaking. Placemaking is the creation of a dynamic, attractive public space to revitalize and bring new investment to a downtown neighborhood. The economic benefits of placemaking occur in several ways: existing buildings, new construction, more customers, and increased tax revenue. Existing buildings near the library lot could be reborn with new and expanded uses, reoriented toward the new space, and adding vitality and energy. New construction would occur to take advantage of green views. More customers would be drawn to nearby businesses. A Gallup study defined the quality of public place characteristics as social offerings, openness, and aesthetics, including physical beauty, including parks and green spaces. Liberty Plaza is currently the only green space in the downtown. Creating a pedestrian link from Liberty Plaza to the Library Green would enhance both parks. It would be Ann Arbor's downtown diag. The Ann Arbor District Library draws thousands of people downtown. Like libraries in other cities, the Ann Arbor Public Library could extend itself in relation to an adjacent park. Examples of attractive outdoor features that could be ideas for the Library Green include outdoor ice skating, such as we have at Ann Arbor's Beer Park. Interactive, playful sculptures like the Wave Field on U of M's North Campus and the Cube on Central Campus. The Sculpture Garden, or the Sculpture Plaza in the Carytown area is an open space that relates to nearby businesses. The Library Green could do the same thing. There are town square gazebos in Dexter and Manchester that host popular concerts. Ann Arbor spent over $50 million to put 677 parking spaces underground in the new library lot structure. Despite this investment in underground parking, the city will put about 40 surface parking spaces back on top of the library lot temporarily. The choice is a park or a parking lot. And on July 14th, just after the grand opening for the structure, our group has permission to host an event on top of the library lot, and we're inviting the entire community to come and join us for an afternoon of celebration for the end of the construction, celebration of the businesses nearby that have endured all of the turmoil during the past couple of years, and an opportunity to envision what a park or a plaza on that site might look like, what it might include. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Will. Next is Francis Tudor. Francis.
Hello, I'm Frances Tudor Hargreaves. I'm here as a board member for the State Street Association. As many of you know, we have some challenges with regard to retail space in the State Street area. We have spaces that turn over quite frequently. We also have the fabulous opportunity of the future for the existing border space. And we have First Martin's new and plans for the space underneath the parking structure. So there's a lot of opportunity and challenges that we see on State Street. And as a board, we have discussed recently our desire to learn more about opportunities and learn more about what we can have in our community and in our neighborhoods. One of the things that's come up is the desire to have a retail location analysis study done. This would be something that would encompass the entire downtown, would be beneficial to all of the merchant associations, landlords, everyone that is interested in what is the potential for downtown. Who wants to be in Ann Arbor? Who would be most successful in Ann Arbor? What demographic do we have here that would make a retailer successful? And we are interested in partnering with the DDA in making that study happen. In the past, we've had some of the leaders in this field be based here in Ann Arbor, and we can connect with those leaders and make something very successful and make a study that we can use in the future to bring these retailers downtown. So with that, we would like to have an opportunity to discuss it with you in more detail, to partner with you in making this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Next is Dick Carlisle, who's here on behalf of Bill Kinley.
Seems like a name of place, Bill, as you all know. Well, I'm Dick Carlisle. I'm both a partner and a tenant in South Main Market, which is just across from the property that you are considering for some brownfield development money. And I don't know how familiar you are with our property, but since our acquisition of it, I think it's about 7 years ago, you may have noticed a couple of things. We've made considerable investment of our own money in the retail space to keep the retail tenancy alive down there, and worked very closely with the tenants. And second of all, as a result, it's paid off results because we are 100% occupied in South Main Market on both sides of the building. We have about 14,000 square feet there total. That's been 100% leased. So we've felt very fortunate for that, but also have worked very hard to make that happen. I know why you're considering the brownfield development funds today for Mr. Kettler's project across from South Main, and I don't want to speak specifically to that because I don't know all the intricacies of that specific mechanism that's being requested. However, we do want to say that we're very happy to see that kind of private investment being made within that end of South Main Street. It's certainly been greatly needed in that area as a property owner and a tenant in that area. All the improvements that we see, even small and large down there, are helpful to everyone, and it also is attractive for the image of Ann Arbor as we enter into downtown. But my message here is really quite simple, and the request is quite simple. With this project coming forward, and I understand there's still many steps that have to occur, please consider allocating some funding in the future for a coordinated streetscape and pedestrian improvements in this area on both sides of Main Street. We have a lot of pedestrian traffic in that area because of the school to the south of us, the charter school, other activities. Obviously on football days we have a lot of pedestrian traffic down there. The sidewalks are very narrow, and in some areas in not very good shape. We also have some significant traffic issues there, primarily because of ingress and egress from many of the businesses, including ours, but also the gas station on the corner, which really generates a lot of traffic movement. So my request here is to consider allocating funds for a plan that addresses these kinds of issues to make that area much more pedestrian friendly and to improve the visual image on both sides of the street so that it truly is an image leading into the main part of downtown of which we can all be proud. I will say that too, if you will consider doing this, that we at South Main Market, we do have some willing partners and some cooperative partners in that particular venture. So that's all that I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dick. That closes this portion of audience participation. As I indicated previously, at the end of the meeting, there'll be another opportunity for those of you that wish to speak to us. Next, we have reports from city boards and commissions. Ray Detter's on our agenda. Ray?
You already have in your packet another invitation to the party tomorrow, and hoping that you'll be there. It's always a lot of fun, but it really is very wonderful that a lot of DDA members are also there. The CAC last night, the Citizen Advisory Council, discussed a wide range of items last night. It was interesting, the nature, really wide, because some of them were downtown, some of them were not downtown, but thought nonetheless essential to downtown. So we covered everything from, as Francis Zadoro said, State Street opportunities, borders, and also Michigan Book and Supply, to North Main and Fuller Road. And the way in which all these fit into the nature of possibilities with regard to developing a downtown that is more than it is now in terms of following what it is that we've been doing over the course of a number of years. But in steps in that direction, I want to just discuss two of the things that we discussed. One, downtown, one near downtown, that's still having a large amount to do with downtown. And one is that we want to congratulate the DDA's Partnership Committee on a very careful way in which they've drafted a DDA policy regarding grant requests for brownfield or other state of Michigan programs requiring a local match. You haven't adopted it yet, but I've been to all the meetings, and it's been a difficult trip. And all of us have learned a lot in the process, really, of developing those. And we think its guidelines are balanced and well-designed. They move us in the direction of a consistent policy that will be fair to all future applicants and actually stimulate other private tax-generating new developments in the downtown. And we certainly make no secret of our support for the residential project at 618 North Main, which we feel is an excellent first use of this new DDA brownfield grant policy. The fact that a portion of the grant will help finance the construction of street improvements from Mosley to Ashley Muse will truly assist 618 North Main in being a gateway project in the downtown. And already, Bill Carlisle is here talking about the nature of how they might fit into this creation of a gateway. Of course, money is a major factor with regard to moving ahead on that. But we are also pleased with the progress of the DDA-initiated Connecting William Street Study Group, but I don't have time to cover that today. But I want to discuss something briefly, which is near downtown. The things that you're really interested in with regard to the nature of connecting William Street and also what it is that we're doing in 618 deal with things that fit into the A2-D2 downtown zoning. But the near downtown area has something else happening that we believe strengthens the downtown and also the entire community. 2 weeks ago, 14 representatives from the 8 near downtown residential associations met to evaluate the R4C R2A Zoning District Study Advisory Committee recommendations report of May of this year. It took 2.5 years to produce. And this group that met was the same group that met with the mayor and every member of City Council to support the creation of a design guidelines task force in the downtown. And that in turn led to the unanimous decision by the Planning Commission and City Council to adopt a set of downtown design guidelines and to create a design review board for development proposals in the downtown area. We're proud of our efforts. We're proud of the efforts of the entire community that all of us played in creating Ann Arbor's downtown design review process. And it's working. Those of us who attended the meetings, it is working. And this week, members of this near downtown neighborhood group of 8 associations asked the mayor and City Council and the Planning Commission to support the report recommendations of the R4C Zoning District Study Advisory Committee and urged them to move forward as quickly as possible to adopt ordinance changes to support those recommendations. We were pleased that the R4C R2A meetings were made very clear that the Ann Arbor community wants to maintain the scale and character of near downtown, one house, one lot, central area neighborhoods. The advisory report recognizes, and I quote, overwhelming public feedback indicated a strong desire to keep the existing streetscape and development pattern of R2A and R4C neighborhoods, including size and massing of existing structures, and also includes, very importantly, a limitation on the combination of lots that will make it impossible for something like City Place to ever happen in the near downtown area in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Any other reports from city boards or commissions? Seeing none, any communication from DDA members? Sandy?
I would just like to address the slideshow that we saw. And I really appreciate the passion of those for the library lot and bring that to us. I do find it slightly disingenuous on the presentation when it's compared to what we have downtown, which it's all bordered by historic, for the most part, historic districts. So what we see on those slides is something that's really not feasible to obtain in in the center of downtown right now.
Like a
So-
Millennium Park.
Well, like a Millennium Park, and each and every one of those examples have high-rises all the way around, extreme density, and we don't even have 5,000 people living downtown yet. So I think that it's they're great pictures and it's great thought, and but I really want the Connecting William Street process to unfold. I want you all to participate in the open dialogue about what's possible, but I think that we need to keep in mind that we're not Houston, we're not New York City, we just don't have the possibility of creating what was presented to us today. So, and I do really want to have that as part of the dialogue of what we go through forward at the Connecting William Street, but I think we have to be realistic at what's possible in Ann Arbor.
Other communications? John?
Just following up on what Sandy had to say. From that presentation, I think it's a little bit disingenuous, and I would couch these comments as improvements, perhaps, to presentations. To say that Liberty Plaza is the only green space in the downtown. I usually walk or bike from my home and go through the Diag every day. And the Diag is populated by students. It's also populated by people of Ann Arbor. It's populated by families having picnics on blankets and throwing frisbees around. It's a park. It is a state of Michigan park, not a state park, but the University of Michigan is a state institution. It is open and available to all of us. As good of an illustration as you're going to get of the sharing that we do starts a week from Friday when we start the summer festival in the top of the park. And you're going to see families spread out on blankets on University of Michigan parkland all the way to the fountain, and young people talking and throwing frisbees and people having a great time with bands playing right there. I also note a very nice little park that maybe many people haven't discovered, and that is next to the U of M's new residence hall. And there's a very nice park there, complete with benches. It's quite large. It's a very nice green space in downtown Ann Arbor. So I would just urge that in the future, those spots be shown on a map and they be discussed as well, because they are open and available to everyone. And I certainly make use of them in the same way that I and many other Ann Arborites unassociated with the university make use of the Arboretum. Although it's not downtown, it's a similar situation. It's open and available to all of us. And we should use it. But again, I hope everybody comes out for the Summer Festival and enjoys that space. I think it's much improved to have it on that plaza with the fountain behind it and all that greenery around it. It's just really special to be under those trees. I wanted to bring up a couple of other things that I had mentioned at the last meeting. One was Liberty Plaza. Councilmember Briere and I, following the meeting a few days later, we walked through Liberty Plaza with Parks Planner Amy Curris and Colin Smith, who heads up that area. And we're starting to put together a way to move forward on enhancements to Liberty Plaza, which may be a redesign. And there may be some possibilities for some grant money that we can wrestle. It's going to be a couple of year process. Maybe we can figure out a way to use some millage money from the parks if that comes up, depending on what their priorities are. And we may well come to the DDA and say, hey, can you help us again to help redo this park? But it's down the way that we could fix what's wrong. And I don't couch any of this as saying that I'm against a significant park on top of the library lot. But we just need to be careful as we move forward. And as I spoke last month, there are other new parks coming on. I have been very active in my tenure in bringing on new park space in the city. Much of it is like Bluffs Park, which requires very little police interaction, and it's a natural area. It's a different story when you begin to take on these areas that are more actively used, particularly in the downtown area, and the kind of resources that will be needed there. But it's certainly a conversation that we're all happy to have. But I think that, again, the presentation would be enhanced with a recognition that there are other green spaces in the downtown, significant acreage of these green spaces. The last thing I would mention is something that I just don't want to fall off of the radar screen here. I think there's a real opportunity, something that we've talked about in the past on State Street, to kind of change the mix of business there, and we heard Francis Tedoro here tonight, to say that we could enhance the outdoor dining features on State, and I'm talking about the side there that faces toward the Bivouac and Ashley's, in between William and Liberty. If we could bump that out and provide the same sort of cafe dining that you see on Main Street, I think we could begin to see a change in the mix of businesses there. Obviously, the sit-down restaurants would be more likely to come in the future, and the ones that are there would be strengthened to enhance that area. I think that would be a real bonus for them, and it would really create another area of active outside dining. The sidewalk is just too narrow there right now for that to be possible. So I don't want that to fall off of our radar screen, and I appreciate the time.
Other comments from DDA members? Seeing none. I'm sorry.
I certainly
Roger.
support John's last comment very strongly.
Okay, Roger. Any other comments from DDA members? All right, we'll move to number 5, approval of the May 2nd, 2012 DDA monthly minutes. Will someone move those?
I'll move them. No, I can't, I wasn't here.
Okay.
Someone else has to.
Moved and supported. Are there modifications, suggestions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? They're approved unanimously. Subcommittee reports, Partnerships, Economic Development Committee. Sandy, you want to talk about the
I will.
brownfield grant policy?
I will. We, as a committee, have been struggling with the brownfield discussion for several months, and we brought a sample policy to you last month. We've had some changes since then. I don't know that a lot of it is substantive, but I would like to I would like to move that, and I'll go on from there.
All right.
Is there support?
Moved and supported. Go ahead, you want to
all
make
right.
a presentation?
Absolutely. So we had a couple of sticking points in the last version, and one was what our cap was, and we had kind of put a placeholder of 25% in the last time you saw that. We've changed that to raise that to say up to what is allowed by the Michigan Brownfield policy. And that doesn't mean that we need to go there, but it means that that's where we are. That's where our max is. The other significant change addresses, I believe, what Roger's concern was trying to get a little bit more, less subjective about it. And without actually building a matrix in a policy, you'll find on page 9, items 1 through 12, we boiled down aspects of what we would find to be useful for matching dollars. So these are things that we find to be our priorities and our values of the DDA, and they are in order of importance. So really, number 1 is that the project has to address a documented gap in the marketplace or an underserved market of commerce. So we did rank the project that's coming up next according to this, but we really and it helped us to frame how to structure this. But these are the pieces that we thought absolutely needs to address, and the first 3 are primary. Do we have another? We have marked up here. I think that there was 1 or 2 other paragraphs that really tightened the language that allowed us to not set a precedent with any action that we did. So I think that you will find that there are other layers of disclaimers and lawyerly words in there that allow us to have this granted only at our sole discretion. Are there questions or concerns?
On page 10, there was 2 tweets, and I apologize about my European vacation getting in the way of me not being there for last second. And this had gone back a couple of times, and I didn't see any objection about it, was on the Ann Arbor DDA brownfield policy changes and reservations of DDA rights, something to the effect that grant approval would be contingent on review of any subsequent changes that are deemed substantial. prior to or during construction, and disclosure is required on an ongoing basis. We're dealing with this one, with the project that's not yet approved. There may be some add-ons, there may be some clawbacks, and while we can administratively put it into whatever agreement we may give with our grants, I would be reluctant to say, hey, it's a good idea to come present something to us that may not end up being what you build, and then having to go back and claw. So some inclusion, I have a sentence that says to that effect.
Do you have an amendment to offer?
Friendly amendment.
Oh, you want to read it?
Grant approval will also be contingent on review of any subsequent changes deemed substantial, and the city has language to that effect of deemed substantial, made prior to or during construction, which must be fully disclosed on an ongoing basis. This also matches up closely to how the development agreements work when they go from planning to council and then back to planning on changes, that anything deemed substantial has to go back to council. So I think there's some precedent on parallels of that. So that's
Is that friendly?
I would consider that friendly.
Lee, would you?
Just tell me where it would appear exactly.
At the right after WCBRA, under the Ann Arbor DDA Brownfield policy changes and reservation.
Oh,
of
okay,
DDA
yes.
Susan, do you have that?
Yeah, I have it. Newton's going to give it to us. So we can further.
All right, it's been considered a friendly amendment.
Yeah.
If I could, both Matt and Nathan from the county are here. Did you get a sense of what that amendment was and whether there's a concern?
Nathan?
I do have a sense of what his amendment would do. I think that's fine. I mean, I think it would just allow you to put the developer on notice that if there's any changes that happen later on, that you would be kept abreast of those, and if they're substantial, then come back for approvals.
You good?
Sounds good.
I would like to recognize the two in the audience that had an awful lot of time at the table with us in drafting this policy.
Thank
You
you.
don't seem to be getting along though.
I didn't even know he was here.
All right, we have one friendly amendment that Susan, you have. Okay.
Newton's going to give it to us.
And there was another one actually, so I don't know. I don't want to. We can combine them if it's.
That's
You have
friendly and
before
it's
us.
adopted, so
All right.
don't keep
Those
going.
two separate.
We had talked about the requirement for a full financial pro forma, including purchase costs, construction cost breakdown, rental income, all of that thing, etc. I'd like to have actually specified sources and uses, including any equity positions that could constitute a managing member position. So we know who actually owns the thing, especially if this is transferred. I think that's reasonable to disclose, and we should have a knowledge of that. Any bank, any other partner would require the same thing for a managing member position.
Do you have a specific amendment?
Right, friendly amendment. DDA must submit a full financial pro forma, and this is the inclusion, including
Where are you?
The developer must.
Third paragraph.
third paragraph DDA Brownfield policy.
Yep.
Somewhere including, in that list of things that the pro forma would include, a comma, sources and uses, including any equity positions that constitute managing member.
Is that friendly?
That's friendly.
Lee?
Yeah.
Okay. And Susan, you have that
We'll
one?
take that.
Are you done?
I'm done and happy.
Appreciate that.
Thank
Other
you.
comments, questions? Roger?
First, I want to thank the committee for the enormous amount of work it's obviously gone into it. Sorry I did not attend the meetings. I don't unfortunately have a limitless amount of volunteer time.
You have your own.
I have my own demands. I think the concept of using brownfield matches, TIF money grants to match brownfield, potential money from the state, and upgrading public utilities is a very good concept. I think that I support that. I had hoped that we could get something that would be get the subjectivity out of it and essentially make it an administrative action. I understand that trying to balance what the market wants versus what we like to see is a challenging issue. I just think having gone through this when we had TIF grants a number of years ago, these could be very long, endless discussions, and inevitably we're going to end up with a subjective decision that is going to leave some people unhappy. And I think we need to be aware that when you put a policy like that and this in place, that's going to be what's going to happen. If you look at the criteria that we did, I don't think there's a developer born that doesn't think they qualify under some of those. So I guess I'm a little reluctant that we're sort of getting back into plain developer and trying to influence the private sector on where to develop. I say I would certainly be happier supporting something that was truly administrative and objective, recognizing that's not always possible.
Other comments?
I can
Sandy?
address that. I think that the kind of perfect solution that you are looking at would leave us in a position to always approve a project if it ranked within a certain score. And I think that that's specifically what we did not want to do. I mean, I think that we wanted to have a level of subjectivity in here so that we were not in a position, say, should something like Zaragon 2 have come to us and said it fits all the criteria, but we don't really find that that's something that's a gap because people are obviously rushing to do that in the marketplace. So not being hemmed into something that was so rigid that we would automatically do an approval as well. So I think that was what we're keeping an eye on. It's hard to balance that line.
I understand the difficulty.
John?
You know, one thought in all this too is that one possibility is to move forward with this brownfield grant program, but also start looking a little bit more at streetscapes and infrastructure of downtown and areas of potential for that. There may be ways that some of this could get accomplished sort of de facto for developers without going through this grant application. So there might be worthwhile our kind of looking at a sort of a two-track system, because then if we start looking at some of this infrastructure piece, maybe we change to a different system and drop the grant program.
Other comments? Seeing none, are we ready to vote on the resolution to approve the DDA Brownfield grant policy with two friendly amendments? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That passed unanimously. Sandy, thanks for all your work on that.
Absolutely.
Staff.
Absolutely. And the reasoning behind having a policy in place was because we were presented with a project and we started wrestling with it. We really kind of backed up and said we need to have some sort of a policy in place. So now we have a policy to guide us. We have a grant proposal in front of us for 618 South Main. We did run it through a matrix based on the criteria that we have just adopted with a scale that heavily weights the top items and minimally rates the bottom items, and somewhere in between. I think we ended up with a 80 or a 90, 50, 30 kind of a breakdown of a scale. I don't know if that's clear unless you were actually sitting around the table, but we did run it through a matrix of those items, the values and goals. What we did decide was that this project does address an underserved gap in the marketplace of rental property in the downtown. It will act as a catalyst for the South Main area. We've pretty much heard that from a speaker today. It will add to the downtown density, and that the environmental design exceeds the city requirements, particularly with the rain garden that is proposed.
So you want to move the resolution
So
for discussion?
I will move this before I'll discuss it anymore.
Is there support? Support. Okay, it's moved and support. Proceed. Sandy.
Yep. The specific items that we have recommended, which are in the first table, streetscape costs for the sidewalk adjacent to the project at Mosley and Main, and then also from the project heading up the hill to the north to the Ashley Mews. That's the west side of the street only. $100,000 to contribute to the rain garden system. It will not be releasing the stormwater into the city system. It will all be retained on site. This is a portion of, and not the entire amount that is necessary to build the rain garden, and it certainly is looking at, it's not the full amount that takes into account the difference between a infiltration system and the rain garden is built. There's a water main under Ashley Street that needs to be upsized, so there'll be certainly other opportunities to tap into that, and that's at $80,500. And then the bank carrying cost at $25,000 is primarily due to the fact that we are asking the developer to do the streetscape work, and the developer will not be reimbursed immediately for that, but will be reimbursed over a period of 4 years. So there's some bank carrying costs involved with in basically upfront money paid for the developer. So the grant is proposed to be $725,000 and spread out over the 4 years according to the table that's also on page 13.
It's moved and supported. Comments, questions? John?
I have several comments and questions, and hopefully someone on the staff will be able to help with this. When we look at streetscape costs for the sidewalk adjacent to the project on Mosley and Main Streets, I had 2 questions about that. Would this be something that would be required of the developer anyway? And if not, who would handle this work?
Susan?
Take a shot. Yes, every development in the downtown has to do the streetscape near them if they've disturbed it as a course of their construction. So you'll see other projects in downtown, for instance, the Varsity or Zaragoza Glass, that they will be installing a sidewalk and a streetscape that meets city staff requirements.
Mm-hmm. The streetscape costs for the Main Street sidewalk north of the project to Ashley Muse, how would that be handled?
We have.
And I'm assuming the developer wouldn't be responsible for this.
Developer is not responsible, but what's great about it is it enables the developer to access a little bit more state grant for their brownfield.
Mm-hmm.
And working with Nathan and Matt, we had a question to the state, if this was folded in, would there be access to more state funds? And the answer was yes. So what's beneficial to the neighborhood is also beneficial to this project.
Who would actually handle the work, though?
We are anticipating the developer of 618 would do this work, and they would have a contractor on their site doing their streetscape, and the contractor would just continue up.
And who would develop the streetscape then?
The
What it's going to do, the
design would be
design?
designed by the developer. We'd run it by staff to make sure this and the other streetscape elements meet city staff.
And would that design then come back to the DDA for final approval before the work went forward?
We've asked for that. Yeah, the developer was terrific in giving us a very high level of detail for the streetscape improvements on Mosley and the portion of Main just outside their building front. And they've agreed that were this to go forward, they'd give us the same level of detail for streetscape, again, north of their property.
One of the issues that maybe I missed it in here, several years ago, before we closed that loophole, one of the ugliest buildings, in my opinion, that we have in the downtown was built because the developer changed the exterior of the building. It was a loophole that had existed for decades. People hadn't taken advantage of it until this one came along. We later then changed that so they couldn't do that. They had to build what was presented. So if you have a significant level of detail for the streetscape, would they be required to actually build up to that detail?
Yes, as part of this, we've begun dialogue about what an agreement would look like between the developer and the DDA as a result of this grant, and it would spell out in detail the details that would need to be constructed, which is why it's great to get the details for that streetscape north of the project line.
Mm-hmm. I'll skip down now to the rain garden to infiltrate stormwater. Now, they would be required, as all developers are, to control their stormwater on site and avoid that flash. So this would be a further enhancement to their property. Would the rain garden is placed in such a way that it would enhance the neighborhood as well?
I'll let the developer speak to the specifics of that and the access from the neighborhood to it. The reason for the DDA's involvement, we spoke with city staff about where their thinking is of best practice about rainwater. And in the last few years, they've grown more and more to the place of thinking that infiltration, where possible, is beneficial to all of us rather than containing it in tanks and then sending it down as part of the system. So the involvement on our part is really about the mitigation of flood conditions in the Allen Creek corridor to lessen the impact of more rainwater in the pipe area. So it was more about that than the beauty of the actual garden.
When then we skip down to, obviously the water 12-inch pipe could be used, is going to be beneficial to others in the area.
Yes.
And bank carrying costs?
This came out as a course of discussion within the committee. The concern was, the developer raised the concern that they would be asked to do the part of the work that runs north of them. And the DDA's policy about brownfield is we would not expend more money in a grant than we had already received. So it will take us a few years to expend the entirety of this grant. And so the concern was raised about their bank financing costs. And so this was a committee recommendation as a way to address that concern.
So, just along the bank carrying costs, sorry to interrupt, but this is the work that they would have to do to get the state money. So it's not in any way something they're saying, hey, we'll do it, but we got to carry it. They have to go to the state money, our cost of capital, our discount rate, slightly questioning the public good. And it's not an expensive item, but I don't want to create a precedent.
Well, I had a proposal or two on this one. I am concerned about paying with the bank carrying costs. I have concerns. I'm coming around on the rain garden, but I have significant concerns regarding the $135,000 for sidewalk work that the developer would be required to do anyway.
So would you like to propose an amendment first on the bank carrying cost?
Yes, I would like to propose the removal of the bank carrying costs from this chart, and then that would then be reflected and I would leave it to the committee working on the TIF to decide where that would be, which year that would be.
I understand, but it would take it down to 700,000.
It would take it down to 700,000.
Is there support for
I
that
would propose
amendment?
that as an amendment.
I support.
It's moved and supported. Let's have discussion on the amendment, which is to remove the $25,000 carrying charges from the grant. Is there discussion? John?
I'm wondering if we were to do that, maybe the committee could take a look at bumping up the year one support of the project, and that might help sort of mitigate the problem a little bit.
Well, as I say, I'll leave it to the committee to figure out how they want the
I
money.
appreciate that. Other discussion on the amendment? Ready to vote? All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carried. Do you have another amendment?
I do. I'd like to propose taking the $135,000 for the streetscape costs for the sidewalk adjacent to the project, something that would be required of this developer just as it's required of other developers. As we look at other functions that are happening in the downtown with Zaragon and buildings like that, I'd like to propose taking that off the chart as well.
Is there support for that amendment?
No support.
No support for discussion.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Let's have some discussion. Roger?
I think the base amount of sidewalk work that a project has to be put in, the minimum that's required by the city, should be the developer's expense. I could certainly support improvements to that basic level of finish of the streetscape beyond what the city minimally requires. So if there were a way of determining that, the basic concrete that's required by the city put down is X amount of dollars, and the developer is going to increase that by improving that streetscape beyond that minimum, that differential, I could see us supporting, although I think we have to independently determine what that would be.
Lee?
Susan, could you come and tell us more about the sidewalk design, because we've seen it in detail.
I believe that, as I understand the designs, that the developer is intending to do more than the minimum that is required. Typically, what we see in the downtown is a new concrete and then an extension area with brick and the occasional tree and street light. I think that what we've seen is an enhanced planting scheme that has more color, more plants, much more intensively planted than would be normally required. So there is definitely a differential between what would be expected of all developers and what is being proposed as part of this. I don't have the numbers right in front of me to tell you what that differential is, but it definitely is intended to be much more intensively planted.
Well, I guess the question isn't, I don't need to harp it. There isn't anything required because this is out of code and it hasn't been approved yet. And so that's the danger of doing these in this order. It's basically, it gets into an area where I feel comfortable if this board goes in terms of deeming things for, well, that's the standard, that's not the standard. I mean, does it compare to what we do when we do our streetscapes and all that? I don't want to have that conversation. Sorry, what's the question? I don't want to have that conversation because I don't see that under the purview of our body to start funding on the merits of a project that is not by right and is not under any defined standard because it's not approved for variances or PUDs or anything like that. That's, I guess, my only comment on that. And then as we had the audience member talk about the other side of the street, and maybe in our retreat we say, well, are we going to kind of do what the DDA does that we did to Washington and all the other streets, and that might be a conversation, and there might be, like the mayor suggested, what does that all look like all the way up to Ashland News, and it gets very tricky when we're talking about a project that's not by right.
I wonder if I might ask a question to Nathan. If the amendment passes, does the developer lose $135,000 of state money?
It's not quite that simple.
It's not 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, it's not.
Come on up to the
Come
podium.
to the podium.
And identify yourself if you would. We all know you.
Nathan Vogt, Brownfield Redevelopment Coordinator with Washtenaw County. I don't think it's that straightforward. That what the MEDC and what the state wants to see is a significant local contribution. Without any monies from the DDA, you've got a pretty small couple millages that are picked up as part of the Brownfield plan, which probably would not be sufficient to capture the additional state monies to leverage these other eligible expenses. And just to talk quickly about public infrastructure and sidewalks, the MEDC does look at those as eligible to support downtown redevelopment. That's why they support retaining walls, special soil conditions, underground parking. Those are all things that they consider they need to assist with to spur downtown redevelopment, as opposed to just developing out in the greenfield.
Questions?
Yeah, and as Mr. Clark said, I have a problem with this in that I'm pretty friendly to the enhancements that would go beyond what was required. But it's hard to break those down here today. And obviously what's required of every developer, that's one thing. What would really make that streetscape look much nicer, that's something else. So for lack of a number, I'm sort of in a fix here to figure out what would be fair here so that we're covering the extra enhancements versus the required work.
One of the things that bothers me is the reluctance of the state of Michigan to tell us how much do you really need us to put in. And they have all these categories, but they don't put a number to them. And is there a tipping point in your thinking where if we reduce it by XX or X, that the state will say no?
Based on conversations I've had, I think the 725, if they were feeling rather positive about that DDA contribution. So arguably anything in that ballpark would be okay, but this has not gone to the formal process. So I really, they want to have the decision at the local level made, and then the developer kind of take the whole package to them for consideration. And let's remember there's two different programs we're talking about. One is just the Brownfield plan, which helps support those eligible activities. But the other piece is the new community revitalization program, and the developer seeking, I believe, a loan to support the project, kind of a gap loan for the
project as well. So those two different standards, and it's kind of, they're still figuring out the CRP. That's new as of January.
Does the state require an exact number be proposed to them, or can it be a maximum? Say the city, the local governing body has said this is as much as they will give. Is there a difference between that from the state's perspective?
They probably want to see a minimum rather than a maximum. If you said maximum, then the next question would be as well,
what's the minimum?
Yeah, what could be the minimum?
Just through past professional experience with this, it's often comes down to the level of enthusiasm that comes from the local body, not necessarily the number. So does it go through council with good thumbs up, or a nose being pinched, where the difference of $100,000 here or there isn't the deciding factor? They want to know if Ann Arbor comes to the state of Michigan and says, we want this to happen, and here's the money we've put forth in a positive way to do it. That carries more weight, and I believe it's subjective for that, because other cities might not have the ability to come to any sort of ability to say, hey, all we got to put into this is 50 grand, but man, we really want this to happen. The state doesn't want to tie their hands, so only the haves get to get the money, and those with lesser resources than what we might have still have a shot at it. It's my experience of why it is this way. And a lot of phone calls are made, and lobbying, and letters, and that's how it has worked in the past.
It just seems like with this sort of thing, a number is so much more important than just the level of enthusiasm and how much, because now we're actually getting to the point of how much is it, what level. I mean, obviously there's some support. Obviously we've gone to this length to get there. But I guess that's just is there a way maybe we can come up with a range and say we have a minimum here and a maximum there, and then this is, we are in support of the project and whatnot, and then that way some of the concerns can be alleviated from what Mayor John has said, from what everyone else has said. So that's the question I have, maybe to the board.
Sandy?
I would propose that we come up with a number, and I think I would be comfortable with a percentage of that. If we look at the second item, and it's about 2 solid blocks worth of 384 to do a complete rebuild. I think it starts to give you a scale of that. So, 135 to do those 2 particular streets, and I think it's Main Street that's really going to be the upside of the pedestrian friendliness that we're looking for. I think I would be very comfortable in the 50 to 75% range
of the 135.
Of the 135, and know that that we're encouraging the best looking streetscape and really accomplishing the goals that we want to do with this. What we don't want to do is leave it shy and have it be inadequate to accomplish our goals.
Okay, I have a proposal that we change the 135 to 100,000. Does that sort of fit in?
It's been
Amendment?
Lee's moved an amendment to change 135 to 100. Is there support for that?
That's an amendment to the amendment.
Oh, you had an amendment to the 135 to remove.
I was going to remove it.
All right.
And
an amendment to the amendment to not remove it, but to change it to 100.
Add
well,
the
we may be able to. One of the things that I've always done is I don't allow amendments to the amendment to the amendment.
You're such a stickler.
We're on almost
But the second
third level.
amendment,
We're okay.
Yeah, but we're still fine on the second level. But we may be able to find a number, and I was thinking of something in the $85,000 range that that would be friendly.
Lee, you want to withdraw your motion?
Well,
Amend your amendment.
I'm just not sure that's enough. I'm really,
Well, then
Very-
you should go ahead.
I'm very
All right, we have an
concerned.
amendment to the amendment. Does it have support at 100?
Okay,
Sandy's
supported
spoken.
100. Do I hear 150?
No. Now we have discussion on the amendment to the amendment.
Okay, my concern is, as I just said to Nate, is there a tipping point where if we don't give just a little bit enough, that the state is going to say, well, obviously you don't want this project. I do want this project. I do think it will enhance the downtown. The merits of the project have been less discussed than, the brownfield policy. So I'm just thinking 100,000 would be enough to show enthusiasm, and it's not that much more than 85,000. So that's why I would support this amendment.
Is there further discussion on the amendment to the amendment? Newcomb?
Yeah, I guess my comment to that would be a unanimous or close to unanimous vote is probably more interesting to the state than $15,000 here or there, to show our enthusiasm without them having to dive into our budget and everything like that. So to keep it truly friendly, I'd rather shoot, if not to count votes, but I'd rather shoot there to scream from the rafters our support.
Further discussion on the amendment to the amendment. Okay, we're ready to vote on the amendment to the amendment, which would change it from 0 to 100,000. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Want to raise your hands? 5, 6. Opposed? That carries the amendment to the amendment. Now we're back to the...
No, you need 7,
Oh,
because we are a body of 12.
you're right.
So that fails. So now we go back to the 85, right?
No,
We're back to 0.
0.
We're back to 0 now, but if you wanted to propose 85, that's
Yes.
I have an amendment to an amendment.
You're 90.
Did I hear 85?
Yes.
that would be friendly, and I think you were the seconder.
Okay, 85,000.
All right.
You got it, John.
Is there, okay, that's a friendly amendment to the amendment. And John, we still need to vote on yours, which is 0.
No,
No.
it's been
Oh, your
amended to
turn.
85.
Okay.
But I did want to comment on that, and I wanted to, before we vote on that, I'd like to ask Susan a question or two. Have we seen the same level of detail for the improvements above and beyond what would be required for this section in front of, for this section, which would be the Mosley and Main?
So it wasn't spelled out that way. The developer just slipped me a copy of what was presented in discussions. And what he's asked me to point out is that much of this is just planting. So it actually is the above and beyond. What city's going to require is concrete. They're going to require lighting. This listing that he's given us includes a lot of different plant stock. It has also included a maintenance contract for the second year, which is something the city requires.
Okay, so what I want to specify is that as this contract is put together, which follows, that I want the 85,000 to go to these improvements, not to what was required. So it's above and beyond.
Okay.
And I can see that a really nice job there would cost some money.
That can be done through contract.
Okay.
Further, okay, we now have this resolution, which, check my math, now has 85 instead of 135.
That's correct.
It has 25 taken out, which comes to a total of 650. Does that sound right to everyone?
Yes.
But we're still voting on the amendment here.
Okay, okay, you're right. All right, let's vote on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We now have the 85 in there. And we have a total of 650 with the understanding that the suggestion was that the committee could modify the payout slightly. Are there further discussions?
Yes, I'd like to go back now to the rain garden. And I certainly understand, I've had numerous conversations, we've had this in front of us at council many times, about the benefit of the rain garden and the non-release into the city sewer system. But do we have a solid estimate on what the rain garden, is this going to cover the whole rain garden? Is it going to cover part of the rain garden? What's involved here?
Sandy was shaking her head. Susan, you know off the top of your head?
I am ready. This would not cover even a significant part of the cost of the rain garden. What was estimated in the design was approximately $800,000 for the rain garden. And we asked to pull out what would be the cost for tanks in a normal circumstance, which was about $100,000. So the differential was about $700,000.
So let me just characterize that. What you're saying is then, by helping to finance the rain garden, we're actually helping a $700,000 improvement above what would have been required?
Exactly. And again, the primary,
750?
yeah, the primary interest was in the flooding conditions and getting water out of the pipe. Not so much the beauty of the garden and that others would be using it. It really was about infiltration and removing stormwater.
Okay, I'm feeling better about stormwater, about the rain garden, and I'm not going to propose an amendment having to do with that. It is clear that it is a significant improvement above what would be required.
Sandy?
Just the stormwater detention by code is about 100,000. The rain garden in total is about 750, so it is about a 650 differential.
So it's I appreciate it. It's $650,000 improvement above what would have been required, and we're only being asked to finance 100,000 of that. Okay.
Further discussion. Newcomb?
2 questions. Would this now then have to be under the guidelines of the policy that we just approved?
Yes.
So what the developer would have to provide in terms of this money for real estate development consultant, all that stuff, that still has to happen, even if we approve it now? The stuff that he hasn't done yet?
That's a good question.
Susan?
Well, I would, not being a policy member, I would suggest that this came in before the policy had been approved, and it might be that it therefore could be viewed as grandfathered. They've done as much as we've ever asked in terms of giving us information. They've provided a great deal. However, they were not going through a process. We've just now established the process. So it's really your call whether or not you want to enact a policy to a project that came before you before the policy was in place.
I guess I'm okay with them not having to spend the extra money, because clearly they've spent a lot of money and time doing it. I would like to see the sources in use, and I would like to make sure that they, given that this isn't yet approved, follow that portion of the policy. Personally.
I think that's fair.
It's understood. Susan?
Yes, it's very clear.
Okay.
And I guess the other one is, these are paid out, I'm assuming after we get confirmation that taxes have been paid
Correct.
by them and not by the county, correct?
Correct.
Because if they don't pay them, then the county pays them. And then would we see for things where they're tied to specific things, would we see receipts that the 750 or 650 rain garden was actually 750 or 650, or how would that logistically work?
Susan?
We have, with Nathan, someone who's going to be monitoring the brownfield grant, and it's Nathan's task to keep track of those sort of details. And they will be providing information to Nathan so that Nathan can then coordinate getting the state funds. So there will be someone monitoring the specific expenditures. I think I answered that correctly.
He's shaking his head.
Yeah.
Thanks for all your work on this. Further comments, amendments? Sandy? Oh, John.
I appreciate the attention and the votes of the fellow DDA members. I'm pretty satisfied now that we've got this narrowed down so that what is included in this is actually an improvement above and beyond what the developer would have been required to do. It's an interesting improvement, I think, particularly when we look at the Main Street sidewalk north of the project to Ashley Mews. That is something that the DDA may have themselves taken upon. It's going to be interesting to have this new development. I hope it goes forward. I'd also note that what's been coloring my thinking on this is a development that seems to be welcomed by the neighborhood. I know Councilmember Anglin has also been suggesting these changes, and particularly the work on Main Street, and is in favor, as far as I can tell, of this moving forward. I have a very long history, having grown up not far from here, and the old Fox Tent Mounting, and everything that went on there, and I do believe this brings more residents to the neighborhood. It's certainly going to enhance some of the businesses across the street, one that we've heard about today. And given the fact that this money does go to improvements above and beyond what the developer would have provided, but also that, and I think it's sometimes difficult for folks to grasp if you don't deal with these things all the time, we're not writing a check and giving it to the developer. Without these new tax revenues, this money would not have existed. And I think that's always important to point out. So I will be voting in favor of this revised resolution, amended resolution.
Further comments? Sandy?
Just administratively, we do have in the resolution, this is a recommended timing for the brownfield grant, and I don't know administratively whether or not you want us to adjust our schedule, or whether or not that's something that we can handle afterwards.
Does say recommend.
Yeah, why don't we work within staff, and you can give us authorization to benefit the development, but also the DDA budget. You would give us that authorization after the meeting.
Yeah, that's in the second to last resolved.
Exactly, we'll work to figure it out.
That's, I'm happy with that.
Further comments? Okay, we're ready to vote on the amended resolution. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries unanimously. And thanks again, Sandy, for your
Absolutely.
patience and work.
Thank everybody who stuck with me as I kept making more committee meetings required.
We had a lot of special meetings.
So I'm also sorry that I'm blowing your records on timing, because I've been spending like the last hour on this, and I'm not done yet. So just to give an update on...
Challenging.
Yes. Let's give an update on the Connecting William Street, that we have a leadership and outreach committee meeting on June 20. We're in the process now of beginning to construct scenarios which we will take out for public commentary and responses. And are we done with our speaker series? Have we got one more?
We have one more. We're working on planning it. We have one more, but we don't have the details worked out. Jeff Myers and I are coordinating.
Do we have a date?
No, we do not. The date
Okay.
we were hoping for is not available at Conroe Neal's.
Okay, so stay tuned. We have
Stay
one more in our speaker series. Now I'm done.
Okay.
Oh, next meeting, June 13th, 9 a.m.
Any questions of Sandy? Thank you.
I'm done.
Now we have the Bricks Money Transportation Committee. Parking revenues, Roger?
I think our agenda next month is coming up with a new name for the committee.
Yeah.
If you'll turn to page 15, our monthly parking report for April versus April of a year ago. Overall revenues were up about 9%. Hourly patrons, number of people entries into the structure, was actually down about 8%. We asked our Low and Republic Parking to take a little deeper look at what precisely was going on in April. Our revenues although the revenue increase is still strong, it hasn't been quite as strong as in past months. And we've also been noticing growth in hourly number of parking patrons, and we have a decline in April. Several factors entered into this, and I thank Republic Parking for, again, taking a close look at this. First of all, the number of business days was one less than in the month a year ago, and the number of Friday, Saturdays, the weekend business, is 2 days less than in April a year ago. Further, in graduation took place at the end of this month. In April this year, there were 4 days of graduation all in April. Last year there were 3 days of graduation, and one of those 3 was in May, didn't count toward this. And what we notice in graduation is people come into the structure on an hourly basis, but they stay all day long. So although the number of the dollars may be similar for hourly parking, the actual number of cars coming in and out is less. So we're attributing the drop in hourly patrons in April to the fewer weekend days, the fewer business days overall, and the difference in graduation this year versus in April a year ago. But I would still point out that revenues were up 9%, which is certainly a very nice, solid increase. And we'll certainly be able to try to address any questions.
Questions?
What was the corresponding year-over-year percentage increase in rates?
We think the rates were up about in the 6 to 7% range. So the overall revenue has been running, and consistently has been running, higher than the rate increase.
Obviously, the concern is if revenue's going up and hours of patients are going down, you're not attributing great things.
And again, if you look at the last 6-9 months, this is an aberration from those last 6 or 9 months. The trends in both have been very strong. for a while now.
Yep.
John?
Yeah, it doesn't bother me. I think when you see the kind of increases that we've been having very steadily, you can't expect that to happen every month. It's just, I know we see that a lot, for instance, with crime statistics, that it doesn't move in a straight line. It's a curve, it's ups and downs to it. So it seems reasonable that some months it's not going to go up, might go down.
But overall, I think if you look at the last year, we've been surprised at both the growth in revenue and the growth in hourly users.
Other comments, questions?
Okay, Roger, you're up. Okay, next.
Parking demand?
Yes. At our last board meeting, committee was authorized by the board to look at demand management strategies for the library lane parking structure that will be coming online in the next month, and challenged us to come up with both demand management rate suggestions for that structure as well as the entire surrounding area. We spent a lot of time coming up with some ideas that I'd like to go through. We are putting those in place as the board authorized us to do, but I'd like to report on what we have come up with. Essentially what demand management is, for those who have not been immersed in it for a long time, is pricing parking based on the demand in a particular area, or a particular location. So the areas that have, the places that have the highest demand should be the highest priced, and the places that have the lowest demand should be the lowest priced. Much easier said than done, but that's the basic philosophy behind it. Integrated into this is alternative transportation concepts that allow people alternatives beyond just parking on how to get downtown. So with Nancy Shore's and the Get Downtown program's help, we've come up with a number of alternative transportation strategies to work along with the demand management parking strategies that we're putting in place. And I'll just briefly go through some of these. We're having Get Downtown staff put together an audit of transportation audit for the State and South University businesses. We requested them to do some target marketing communication to these businesses. We're having the Get Downtown program update and distribute its area-specific commuting options guide. So now that they can specifically target businesses in a particular location on what their options for parking, alternative transportation, a whole range of possibilities on how to get to their business at the time they have to be there. We've asked the Get Downtown program to develop that program to encourage employers to provide a transportation stipend. So instead of just a straight, here's your monthly parking pass, we pay a fixed amount for it, giving the employees options on, instead of a monthly pass, of a Go Pass, and looking at other options for getting downtown to try to ease the demand in the high demand areas. We're all there. Downtown is also going to work on businesses in the State Street and area to see if their employees are willing to give up their parking passes and look at other options. We're also going to expand the Zip Car program into the near the Maynard parking structure. There already are 2 Zip Cars just south, I believe, on Thompson Street, just south of William. So we're looking at expanding that, and we're also going to be adding 2 additional in-street bike racks to the area. So those are just some of the things that Nancy Shore and her staff are working on to try to encourage alternative transportation. As far as the parking goes, clearly the structures that are at the highest usage and the highest demand are in the campus area, the Liberty Square structure, the Maynard structure, and also the Forest structure. I can tell you from much experience that frequently the Maynard structure does fill up in the middle of the day, and people actually have to wait to get in it. Liberty Square is also very near capacity. So we're proposing a number of a demand management strategies to try to address that. We're going to improve signage between the State Street area and the new Library Lane parking structure. And then we're going to put a 2-year pilot project in for the new Library Lane structure. Our experience is when you open a new parking structure, and this is, above ground, below ground, it doesn't matter. It doesn't really get used much for the first couple years. That it takes the public a couple years to find it and find the convenience of it and start using it. This again is based on our own experience. So we're going to put in a program that we think will jumpstart that process. We are scheduled right now to raise the monthly parking permits at Maynard and Liberty Square from $140 to $145 scheduled on September 1st. Instead, we're going to raise the monthly rates in just those 2 structures to $155. Those are clearly the highest demand structures within the entire system. And between the two, we have, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 700 monthly parking permits in the 1,400 spaces between those 2 structures. As an incentive, that's the stick part. The incentive part is in the Library Lane structure. We're going to offer a monthly rate for the first 2 years for any parker that is a monthly permit in Maynard or Liberty Square to move to the Library Lane structure for $95 a month for the first 2 years. So there will be a substantial $60 a month savings if existing monthly parkers want to move from Liberty Square or Maynard, the 2 highest demand structures, into the new parking structure for those first 2 years. We're also going to notify any new users to the system, people coming into the system for the first time that haven't been part of it, that aren't currently part of it, that we'd also extend that $95 monthly parking rate to new users to the system. So this is our first real substantive experiment with differential parking rates in the parking structures, and we'll see what happens. Again, if we get, since we don't expect the Liberty Lane parking structure based on past experience to have a lot of use initially, we're essentially, although we're putting cheaper monthly parkers in there the first 2 years, there would probably be spaces that would be otherwise empty. Further, we're opening up Liberty Square and Maynard for hourly users where there's an enormous demand. Right now, Liberty Lane is strictly a monthly parking structure during the day. We're going to switch that so it'll both be monthly and hourly. So we're going to be able to allow hourly parkers to start using Liberty Square, and again, in the campus area, that we feel fairly confident that those spaces will be used by hourly parkers. So again, it's our first real aggressive experiment. It's a perfect time to do it now that we have a new structure to experiment with, and we'll certainly report on what the results are. All this will start taking place, I believe, September 1st. And be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I just wanted to. I'll just start out with saying I think it's a great idea. I mean, we did a hard hat tour. It's my first time actually in the structure recently, and while touring a parking structure isn't exactly usually my idea of a great time, but it's actually a very, very well designed. It's a beautiful structure. I mean, from being down levels and levels under the ground and being able to see natural light. I mean, it's something we all argue about and talk about kind of in the abstract, but when you actually see it, it's kind of something to be seen. So I think that anybody that does use that, take advantage of the $95 a month option, is actually getting a pretty good deal because they're going to be in kind of the premium structure. Really that's there. So I guess finding it might be tough since it's underground, but since everybody knows that's there, I think it's going to be a great idea. So pushing things towards there, I think it would be great. I mean, I think that having the people that do work downtown that have trouble finding a spot that they can have monthly because of the limited passes, I think would really help out. So I just kind of wanted to add to that and give my experience with the structure.
It seems that one other opportunity is Get Downtown is talking to folks, State and South U, would be to be able to provide information about the parking piece to this. You know, obviously, if it's going to open up more hourly spaces, it'd be good for other merchants to know that and sort of promote that to their customers. And the same with their cheaper parking rates that their employees or folks can use in the new structure. So that's one other aspect for sort of public liaison, get the word out about this new system.
I think we'll really be talking with Nancy and our staff, Jay, to try and get that information out. We are sending letters out to all the monthly parkers in Liberty Square and Maynard, informing them of
When will those go on? Fairly soon? Oh, okay.
Assuming there's no major disagreement.
Great. So it'll be out there.
Yeah, I believe the letter's written.
Other comments, questions? Great job on behalf of the staff and Roger.
Staff did a lot of work on this.
It's not just a change in the rates, it's really much more.
It's really an attempt to, as we've been talking about for years, try to influence behavior to try and maximize usage of the system.
Okay. And Joe looks satisfied with it, so the finances must be okay.
It was, there's a question of, it was certainly designed to be revenue neutral, although what we're trying to do is influence behavior, and when you influence behavior, you're never sure what the results will be.
And it'll take a while.
Yeah. So we don't know what the ultimate financial impact in those 2 years will be, although the intention was not to raise additional funds with it, but simply affect behavior.
Okay, Roger, keep going. You have a budget amendment?
Yes. Let's see if I can break my record here. There's a resolution on page 21 to amend our budget. I would like to move the resolution.
Second. It's been moved in support. You want to make a presentation?
Yeah. Get to my notes here. We are, as a public body, we are required by law to amend our budget every year near the end of our budget cycle to reflect what has actually taken place in our budget. And we've done this every year. We, just to remind everyone, our fiscal year runs from July 1st through June 30th. We pass a budget usually in January or February preceding that year. And then we are required by state law to amend that to reflect what has actually taken place before the end of that fiscal year. So since our fiscal year ends June 30th, this is the last board meeting, we are amending the budget at this board meeting. The challenging part for us, particularly an organization that invests in, does a lot of capital expenditures rather than an operational organization where the changes in budget usually are not dramatic. When you're building a $45 million parking structure, the flow of money in and out is not a nice, steady, predictable stream. And the law, which is a little hard for us in the private sector to get our hands around, we have to change the budget to reflect all expense and all work done through the end of June, even though it's not the end of June yet, and we're not sure exactly how much work is going to be done by the end of June. And to make it even more complicated, any invoices that come in by the end of August that were for work in June, we also have to include in this budget. So with this large parking structure and large bills out there, we're going to have to guess or estimate where we think we're going to be on this, because we frequently get, or these days are getting invoices for $1 million, so there can be some huge swings. We also were taken to task, at least by one council member last year, for having our fund balances too low. So we are being very careful to be extremely conservative in amending this budget so that our fund balances in all our funds look very secure. It is a little ironic that we have different fund balances that are strictly at our discretion. There's no law that says we have to have separate funds, only just one overall fund, and indeed it's all one bank account anyway. This is our accounting, so the board can at any time move funds from one fund to the other, but we're modifying the budget so that we have a healthy fund balance in all of our funds. So if you go to, not the summary page, but if you go to the page after that, 23, yes. I'll just hit the highlights of the changes and then we can look at the overall impact. On our TIF fund, staff has been very, well, first at the top, our TIF revenue was a couple $100,000 less than we had originally budgeted. Do some revaluation of some of the properties downtown. We have been very tight on our administrative expenses, and those are lower, both in salaries, fringe benefits, and administrative. And then we're essentially assuming that the entire parking structure is going to be completed and paid for by the end of June, which is almost certainly not going to happen. Certainly won't be getting all the invoices in by the end of June, or probably even by the end of August. But we're amending our budget. We are assuming that all the costs will be paid in the current fiscal year. So we are amending the amount that we have for capital construction by about $2.4 million up to a total of about just under $3.5 million of construction costs. Again, it's very unlikely that all this construction will be paid for, but we are putting in our budget just in case all those invoices do come in by the end of August, as I explained. That would leave us with a fund balance in our TIF fund, if all those expenses were paid, of about $1.2 million after all those that construction. I will say that when the construction is all done, we will probably come back in about 6 months from now and recommend that we amend our upcoming fiscal budget to reflect what the ultimate costs and expenses of the parking structure in the 5th and Division construction has been. The number on this is large because, and all these construction numbers are larger because of the way the flow of the money has come in. We anticipated some of this money being spent in the previous 2010-2011 fiscal year, and was not because of, again, the way construction invoices come in. Indeed, there are some invoices we haven't received that we know for work was done 6 months ago. Look at housing on the next page. We have reduced that by $500,000 because we had a budgeted grant for the Near North Affordable Housing Project in this fiscal year, and that is payable, I believe, when the construction is completed. And since they have not started construction yet, we obviously are not going to be paying that grant out this year, although it will still remain on our books as a grant to be paid. Next page, parking. Several things besides the additional money for construction in here. First, I'd like to point out that the revenue in the parking system is $867,000 more than we had budgeted. This is a reflection, again, of the both increased rates that went into effect in February, and also just increased demand and usage in the parking system. So our revenues were, again, significantly higher than we had budgeted for. At the same time, I think Republic Parking under our low has done an excellent job of reducing their expenses. If you look at direct parking costs, are down about $600,000. So they're both taking in more revenue and spending less money at the same time. I think they've done a very good job in reducing the hourly costs, some of the wage costs, being more efficient in doing some of the maintenance costs. So there's been a significant savings in the operational end also. And again, in the capital construction, we're adding almost 2.4 million. Again, most of this is money that was originally budgeted in fiscal year 2010, 2011. We're putting it all in this fiscal year. Again, unlikely that it all will be paid out in this fiscal year, but we're being safe by putting that in the budget. And with all that construction being paid, we still end up with a fund balance of almost 1.3 million in the parking fund. Lastly, on parking maintenance, also significant changes to ensure that our fund balances stay robust. We have not transferred the $2 million into the parking maintenance fund this year from the parking fund. We have kept that in the parking fund, so that fund stays financially sound. We have cut back, as we have described in the past, on our routine maintenance costs for this last year, something that we looked at extensively with our engineers, and because we have spent so much money on preventative maintenance in the structures, we are so far ahead of where a typical parking structure would be that reducing preventative maintenance for a couple years has virtually no effect on the integrity of the structures other than just a few cosmetic issues. I want to compliment Passports for their diligence in maintaining the system. We have probably the best maintained public parking system in the country right now. So we have cut back on that. We are putting essentially some contingency money in here of $1.5 million in construction. We don't really anticipate that will be used, but is there until all the bills are paid and all the invoices are in and we're sure that we have plenty of money. We're not going to spend that on preventative maintenance. We're just going to hold that as a contingency for the time being. And that still leaves us with about $340,000, even if we had spent that all on construction in our parking maintenance. So this is an extremely conservative readjustment to make sure that we comply with all the requirements of state law, and probably the most unlikely combination of circumstances that we're able to see. And once we know what our final audited numbers are and all the final numbers of the parking and Fifth and Division construction, we'll come back and amend our upcoming fiscal year budget to reflect those. And I, undoubtedly with Joe's help, will be glad to answer questions.
So we have a resolution to approve of revised DDA budget for fiscal year 2011, 2012. Further questions, comments? Sandy?
Russ did have to leave, but he wanted me to make sure that I pointed out the item, page 23, that you failed to pass up the opportunity to mention the discretionary transfer there for elephant snot.
Yes, that was a $1,538 increase to the budget. For those who are not savvy of the ways of downtown, that is a commercial product that removes graffiti that we donate to the building owners to remove graffiti in the downtown.
I had the same question, but Lee surprised me.
Okay.
Keep that in mind. Other Newcomb.
Page 25, direct parking expenses, account 56810568020. Do those proposed increases in rent and property taxes, are they reflected in the lease amendments we're going to subsequently vote on?
I would have to refer to Joe on that.
So is there any procedural problem in approving those rental increases before we approve the amendments to increase the rents with the leases?
I mean, we've been on month to month with them.
Okay, I'm fine either way. I just want to point out it's a 12% increase in rent.
That's not all attributed. We're found in the leases you will look at now. You're at a rate of inflation for those
So how does 2.3 end up at a 12% increase? Is there other?
Joe, why don't you come on up to the podium?
Those are other effects of rates going up on our rental charges. I mean, we're splitting, yeah. We have a number of different leases in that line.
Okay.
Yeah, those aren't the only leases of parking spaces.
And when you say those, you mean the next two coming up?
The next two coming up.
We have lots down here that we split the meter rents with.
Exactly. So as revenues go up, the amount we pay out to those property owners goes up.
Yeah. So yeah, part of that would be a result of increased parking usage downtown.
Other questions of Roger? Joe? Okay, we're ready to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's unanimous. You're on a roll, Roger.
Okay, we'll try to be brief on the rest of this. On page 27, we have the 5th and Huron lease for approval. That is the lot that is directly out the window across from us, across from the City Hall and the Justice Building, the southeast corner of 5th and Huron. We lease this from First Martin Corporation, which is an LLC that First Martin Corporation controls. Page here. And essentially, we're increasing the, this amends the current lease and extends it through November of 2014 with a increased percentage based on the consumer price index. It's a fairly simple amendment that we've, to continue leasing that space from City Hall LLC.
Okay, you want to move it?
I would like to move the resolution.
Moved and supported. Is there discussion? Seeing none, all those, I'm sorry, Newcomb.
So this stated 2122, just because it doesn't explicitly state what our current month-to-month rent is that a 2% increase of what we're currently paying? Okay, so they're not jumping 5 and then saying the next 3 will be?
No, okay, no, it's all been with the CPI that we've been using on this lease.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? There's unanimous. One more.
Okay. The second is a resolution to approve a lease with the Huron-Ashley Limited Partnership, which is the first in Huron lot, the lot that is a city block bordered by Huron on the north, Washington on the south, Ashley on the east, and First on the west. This had been a lot that was leased by the city that we operated under the current agreement, under the previous parking agreement. Now that we have a new parking agreement, we wanted to redo and First Martin wanted to redo the entire lease, so the lease is with the DDA, which manages the parking system rather than with the city. Again, I believe it is for 3 years since we've been on a month-to-month with them. It's 3 years retroactive to January 1st of this year, so for 2012, 13, and 14. And again, the rate increases the rental increases are consumer price index. There is some language in there that if they decide to develop part of the site, rent will be adjusted based on the usable parking spaces left.
And move that.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I would like to move that.
We supported it. Further discussion. John?
Is there an out clause for if the owner were to be interested, for instance, in developing their parcel?
Yes,
in 3 years?
absolutely. I believe it's a 60-day notice on that.
But it's not unilateral. All right, it is unilateral. They can get out.
Yes, correct.
I think it has to do with when they present a site plan.
Yeah, they have to have present a site plan to be able to do that. And again, they wanted to put in so that if they decided to develop part of the site, they could do that.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Roger, or John's got a construction update?
Yes, I think that the first thing everyone is interested in is when is Fifth Avenue going to reopen. There is work currently being done on the entrance ramp, the canopy on Fifth Ave, as well as at the south end of the site where the new storm sewer has been put in, but there was probably more extensive damage to the concrete underlayment after they took off the asphalt, and so that all has to be re-poured concrete, holding things up a bit. But the new opening date is June 18th. I'm told that asphalt is actually supposed to be put down on the 14th, so it may very well be a few days sooner than that. So 10 days from now, I believe the road will be reopened. The deck in general, most of the things that are being done now, we still have some surface concrete to pour. I expect that to be done next week. Most of the other things involve finishes, handrails. There's a lot of painting going on and a lot of painting still to do. But again, we are sticking with our opening date of July 12th, hoping that perhaps it could be earlier than that. I'm optimistic that we will meet that date.
Questions, John?
Just thank you for all that you do.
Yeah.
John's become a construction expert in the last couple of years.
I knew more than I used to.
Defined as an expert. Are there further reports from this committee?
Let's hope, John.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll just announce our next meeting then, which is Wednesday, June 27th at 11 a.m.
All right. Other DDA matters. You know, our bylaws require that we have our annual meeting in July, and if we met on that Wednesday, the first Wednesday, will be July 4th. So when you adopted the calendar, we changed the annual meeting to July 2nd at noon. So hopefully we can all make it. In accordance with past practice, unless something comes up, the August meeting is canceled. And as John said, the schedule for the Library Lane opening is Thursday, July 12th, 5 to 8. And that's a grand opening and a party. So hopefully it'll be done by then, John.
Yes, it will. The party is going to be
Well,
tied in with the rolling sculpture event. So I think it'll be very enjoyable.
There's some cool cars.
Other DDA matters. John?
Yeah, just a couple things, a couple of announcements and a couple of points. Just in case you didn't know, the Dexter Ann Arbor run, I was there to help kick it off on Sunday morning. There were 5,700 runners, and people coming from different states. It was a pretty amazing day for it. And then, of course, the Taste of Ann Arbor was a huge success this year. It was brutal as a judge of entrees, I can tell you that. Susan, you were judging hors d'oeuvres?
No, ethnic foods.
Ethnic foods, yes. It was
Daunting, very tough.
Yeah, and you really had to train for that. But also the Green Fair is Friday night, bringing a lot of people downtown, and then the festivals, as we approve these street closures at council, they just take off. And then we have a fun summer ahead of us moving forward. But I also wanted to give you an update on the Mayor's Downtown Marketing Task Force, and I would note that our July meeting, rather than being on the first Tuesday, will now be on July 10th to account because it would have been on the 3rd. It's an interesting meeting. John comes sometimes. I know others stop in. He's there most of the time. But we've had a long-term discussion about panhandling, and we're out with our posters. We're out with our postcards. And I know that I spoke with in my regular weekend meeting with Chief Situ today. He has set up meetings with all the business associations to do walk-arounds. Several people may be going along with him. One of the things that was brought up at the meeting yesterday is that the State Street Association was particularly appreciative of the downtown policing effort. We're seeing a lot more police in the downtown area now, more bicycle police. Chief Situ was telling me about the enthusiasm that is shown, particularly by the younger officers. They want to be downtown, and they're taking every opportunity they can to work down there. And I think what I was a little worried about, and the chief was worried about, we were all worried about, was kind of a surge in the aggressive panhandling that would take place when the weather warmed up, and we haven't seen that. So their efforts have been very successful in keeping things moving along rather peacefully in the downtown area, certainly. And I would urge you that there's an excellent piece in Amber.com today, written by Councilmember Taylor, that talks about crime in the city and really puts the true light on it that in fact ours is a very remarkably safe city when compared with other cities in just about any way you want to look at it. And there's been some media push that says that's somehow not true. Some columners too. But and there's something I think showed up in the media recently from one of the downtown merchants on State Street as well. But so that's interesting reading, and I'm glad to see that it's getting out there in the media. And I would just urge everybody to go to as many of these things as you can and enjoy yourself. But one last piece before I forget it. The latest report I have, and I know this concerns us, is that with the Avalon Near North development, that they expect to be completing at this time financing by the end of June, and that demolition of those houses, which we've all wanted to see, would begin in July. And it would move forward. Now, there's some obviously some T's to cross and I's to dot between now and then, but it seems to be moving along well. The city has a great deal of concern, Councilmember Smith and Briere, particularly in the First Ward, with the Old Greek Church and what's happening with that, and we've had some discussions about that. The city would really need to build a case, a strong case, which isn't easy to do, to tear it down. I would just hold up as an example the abandoned, overall ugly gas station on Depot in Maine. The city was denied the ability by a judge, circuit court judge, the ability to tear that down. So it's not an easy thing to do. But it's certainly an area that we are interested in getting the old and decrepit structures in that area down, and we're going to continue to push very hard to do that.
Sonic Lunch.
Sonic Lunch, yes, Sonic Lunch kicks off tomorrow. And we even had to do two street closures because for Liberty later on in the summer, Mitch Ryder and the Direct Wheel is going to be down there, and so another big event, another headliner that's expected to draw a huge crowd. So lots of great things going on downtown.
Restaurant week starts Sunday.
Restaurant, well, you got to get up, speak up about that.
Restaurant week starts Sunday, runs through next Friday.
Other plugs for the city in downtown. It's a good time of the year for downtown. Any other business before we get into second portion of audience participation? All right, we're now to the point on the agenda where we have audience participation again. You can speak for 4 minutes. Yes, come on up.
My name is Nancy Kaplan, and I would like to speak a little bit about the library lot. Some other items maybe to consider. One is the DDA survey, which the response showed support for green space. And second would be the failed Liberty Plaza. And although it has failed, it indicates that the city was willing to have a green space. And streetscape improvement, you talked about that with the project on Main Street that you're supporting. And certainly with the bus depot, Federal Building, the William Street garage, there is some need for some respite from all that stone and that hardscape. So I suggest doing something temporary to, instead of having temporary parking on top of the underground garage, try temporary use of trees and sculpture to try something as a temporary, to see if it works, just like you're experimenting with pilot, with the parking, to give a pilot, to give an opportunity to see if a park or something that is very green would work in that area. And certainly if you would give even half what you're giving to a developer to improve the streetscape, you would give towards a temporary trial at that area of the parking garage. We could see if it would work, and if it would fail, well then we would know that it would fail, but if it would succeed, we would know also that it would succeed. I think if you look at the bigger area and see how unattractive that area is. And I know you're working on William Street and connecting William Street, but the area has a lot of unattractive buildings, and I think that it would benefit from some trees and some green and some sculpture and something of interest and some, as I said, respite from what is unattractive. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the board?
My name is Kitty Kahn, and I just want to say that I totally agree with the last speaker. And there are such things as green roofs. And why can't we try a green roof on top of the new parking structure? I mean, what have we got to lose? We've got plenty of parking down there. We don't really need more parking spaces on top. Let's just at least give it a chance and just try it. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board? Seeing none, will someone move to adjourn?
Move, we adjourn. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourn.
You make it that much.